At Focus on Liberia, we discuss everything Liberia, from education to politics, arts and culture, entertainment, agriculture, history, religion, family, and technology. Focus on Liberia uncovers and showcases the best of Liberia and shows the world the truth about Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We conduct interviews, panel discussions, debates, and more. Tune in to Focus on Liberia on Facebook and YouTube and be a part of the stories that make up the news.
This is Focus on Liberia, and I am Dennis Ja.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, and welcome to a new day where we delve into transformative dialogues about social justice and the voices leading a charge for social reforms. Here at a new day, we explore the intersections of politics, culture, and tradition with the leaders who are reshaping our world for the better. A new day focuses on critical dialogues around social justice with emphasis on gender justice to influence policies and contribute to societal shifts. My name is Priscilla Mah-Belloh. Thank you for joining us, everyone. So, we facilitate conversations that challenge our worldviews and lead to the evolution of a new consciousness of ourselves, our relations to each other, and the world in which we all live. Today, on a new day, we are back with Dr. Kyle Patrick Burrowes. For those who did not see last Sunday's conversation, Dr. Burrowes is the director of the Institutes for Research and Policy Studies at the University of Liberia. He is the author of The Power and Press Freedom in Liberia, 1830 to 1970. This is the work that we're going to be talking about today. He is also a co-author of the Historical Dictionary of Liberia. His research has received awards from the International Communication Association and the Association for Education in Journalism and Mass Communications. Dr. Burrowes earned a BA in journalism cum laude from Howard University in 1976, MA in communications from Syracuse University in 1979, and PhD in communications from Temple University in 1994. Welcome back to a new day today, Dr. Burrowes, and thank you for agreeing to return.
Thank you, Priscilla, for the invitation. I really appreciated the way the program went the last time in terms of the questioning and all of that. So I'm glad to be back. I just would like to correct one thing about my bio.
Okay.
And that is, when the Cola Forest book was published, it included on the back a short note about my background. And I had been appointed to head the institute at LU. That was a long time ago. Okay. So when I went to Liberia, I served at Cottington as Vice President for Academic Affairs. But I'm retired now, doing my research, and enjoying this phase of life.
Okay. Okay, thank you for the correction, sir.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
And if I can say something, Priscilla, please.
Go ahead.
Call me Patrick and let's drop the sir. And I say that because, in a democracy, in a republic, we are citizens. We're supposed to relate to each other in that way. So if I'm in a classroom, I would insist that students call me Dr. or Patrick or Professor or whatever. But off campus, if I'm interacting with adults, then we need to relate in that way. I just want to ask, question to illustrate the point, right?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
To the audience, not to you, but to the audience. Who do you think called the first president of Liberia, Your Excellency? The only people who did were government officials in other countries. The reason we usually refer to the first president as J.J. Roberts is because most people, Liberians, called him JJ. Just as many Ghanaians called Rawlings JJ. It's a sign of embrace of we are on the level, we're in the family kind of embrace, Mandela is not a long name, or Nkrumah Osajifu. So I think we need to reflect on the fact that today it's like people are insisting on a lot of hierarchy, big brabi, and so I think that it's important for us to just relate, as drop the titles, except in the classroom. That's what I would say. But anyway, please let's get started. There are too many exciting things to talk about.
Okay, so people, last Sunday we discussed Patch's book. It'll take me some time if it feels uncomfortable, so bear with me. Between the Kola Forest and the Salty Sea, or History of the Liberian People before 1800. So please check out our Sunday, July 21st episode for the conversation on that book. Seriously, do yourself some good and listen to him. Today we will discuss another of his work called Power and Press Freedom in Liberia. Let me tell you a little bit about Power and Press Freedom in Liberia. It provides an in-depth historical analysis of the evolution of press freedom in Liberia. So the book covers this period from 1930, when the first newspaper was established, marking a significant period in the relationship between the press and the government, and it details the establishment of the press in Liberia and its early challenges, emphasizing the role of the first newspaper in fostering public discourse and shaping national identity. It also explores the complex and often contentious relationship between the media and the government, highlighting how political and social changes influence press freedom. And yeah, I still consider myself a journalist because I love journalism. So I'm really interested in this work. The book examines how globalization and the rise of civil society organizations affected media government dynamics, contributing to shifts in press freedom and censorship practices. And the narrative also delved into various legal and social developments that impacted press freedom, including laws and policies enacted by successive governments to control or liberalize the media. So we will end with, looking at the detailed historical implications of press freedom on Liberia's democracy and civil rights movement, providing a comprehensive overview of how press freedom evolved over 140 years. That's what we're going to be talking about today. I'm excited. Stay with us, stay with us, stay with us. Yeah, but so first thing, let's check in on the July 26th celebration.
Before we do, let me say something about the book, please.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the book that we're going to discuss today is out of print, so it's very difficult for people to find it. But my goal is to reprint it, to get it back. It was published by a publisher who was able to get it into circulation. It's in many libraries around the world. But then the market that they were targeting was saturated. But they were not targeting the Liberian audience. And so I would like to do that to get the book back out. But in the meantime, all of the other books that I have published are available at knowyourself.press.
Yeah.
And I'm offering a 15% discount to the viewers So if you go there and enter the code, focus on Liberia, you get a 15% discount on any of the books that
Oh,
you
nice.
order. Yeah, appreciate it.
Nice.
So
Wow.
the discount is available until the end of August.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay. I will keep announcing that as the conversation go on.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, so today we are checking in for our non-Liberian audience. Friday was the July 26th, and it's the independence of Liberia. So we got a new way. We've been encouraged by this year orator to refer to our Independence Day as our Defiance Day. So today. The celebration continues across the U.S. in different states. Like in Arizona here, there are activities happening today this afternoon. So we're going to be checking in. We're going to be checking in. We're so blessed. For me, I consider it a blessing to have a living Liberian archive, a historian in our time. So I'm so honored to be the one to be talking to Dr. Patrick Burrowes on this topic. So thank you again, and just if you can give us before I ask you about your reaction on this year's oration, I first want to ask you to give us the historical context, explain how the tradition of the July 26th oration began in Liberia. What was the original purpose of the orations, and how has that purpose evolved?
Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak on that, because I don't think many of us are aware of the tradition, right, of the history. And as an educator, I saw my role in the classroom as not necessarily trying to get people to say, oh, this is what I think about an issue, but about how do you think about the issue? So, do you understand the context in which this took place? It could be the historical or some other context, geopolitical, but understand the context. Then you form your opinion or your reaction. So I want to bring the historical context, right?
Mhm.
Um, to do that, I'll start off by saying that the people who were involved in the founding of the Declaration of our Independence were religious people, many of them. And in most religions around the world that I am aware of, there are three key roles that the religions refer to. One of them is the ruler. So in many of those religions from back in the day, they would refer to the king, right? But the king was the reference to the ruler or the state, the government. A second role would be the priest, right? Or the rabbi, or something equivalent to that. And that person's role, he played like an intermediary between the people and God, directing their prayers for them and so forth. But there's a third important role in most religions that I'm aware of, and that is the prophet. I said something, I don't know if people heard me. The prophet, okay? But what is the role of a prophet? The prophet comes to tell people you're falling short, right? The prophet comes to speak truth. Come what may, whatever the price, speak truth to power. And so it is in that context that the 26th oration was developed. So
Okay.
what happened
Wow.
is the celebration of 26 will be convened. It used to be convened at a local level by a committee of elders. So that we had separate 26 programs in different parts of the country. And then the elders would decide who among us, who do we see, especially the young adults, who is a critic of the society or has a prophetic vision. Let's bring that person to tell us, where are we falling short? How can we improve? You follow? Give us a prophetic vision. And those are the people who would be called. Things changed in the 1940s, and the government took over the celebration of 26. But I
Okay.
can come back to that later. For the moment, I want to focus on the way it was when it was established. So the people who were called included men like Edward Wilmot Blyden, a renowned Pan-Africanist who was also critical of certain practices in Liberia and behaviors that he felt the society needed to overcome. Alexander Crummell, later on, the very first Liberian woman to be called to give an oration, came to tell the society, that was around the turn of the century, early 1900s. She came to say the role of women is being overlooked. Okay? That 50% of the population can contribute and you are denying their contribution. How do you think that we came to the place where Liberia was the first to elect a woman president? It's not by chance. It's not, to me, something that was accidental. Women have played a key role in so many aspects of our lives. And you look at market women in the economy. If the economy was structured differently, they would be involved not just in petty trading, but by now they will be involved in import and export. And some of them are trying the best to get involved at a higher level by going to Ghana to buy things and bring it and trade, or go to Nigeria and buy things. Some are even going to China and buy things and bring it. But the problem has been historically of late that others control the import-export, and so women have been marginalized to petty trading, but women have been involved. We had the first woman president of a university in Africa under Mary Antoinette Grimes Sherman, right? So the woman who came to give that address pointed out a major shortcoming of the society, and we saw the efforts by the society to address that, right? People like Momolu Massaquoi were called to give addresses as well, and they came correct. They came critically, to the society, and so this is not something new. In fact, in many ways, when I heard the address, I was like, wow. Raptel may not know, I'm not sure if she does, the earlier tradition, but she's really bringing things back. You know what I mean? To the origin. What happened in the 1940s was the beginning of a kind of takeover. The government took over the celebration of 26. So they started appointing people who to come and speak,
Sing
who
a
come and
praise.
say what they wanted. You had to sing
Yeah.
praises, right? And that trend continued where the government took over all of the media. Before that, before the 1940s, the only media in Liberia that was owned by the government was the National Gazette, the official gazette, that published somebody died, published their obituary. But newspapers were owned by individuals. So the unfortunate thing is that the traditions that we're aware of is one that people come and sing praises. If I look back over the last 15 years at orations to remember what the people said, one of the few that come to my mind is the oration delivered by Sister Lema Bowie. And I think many of your viewers might remember her as well. And why do you remember? Because she called us to come to our best, deliver our best. And I think that Raptel's address follows in that tradition.
Yeah. Wow. Because my next question was going to be, why do you think? Okay, I can still ask the question. Even though the government took over, and then it sounds so the tone of the whole thing has kind of shifted. Why do you think July the oration remains an essential tradition in Liberia today?
Yeah. So it's, to me, I think it's really essential that this be continued, because what we have is one of those occasions where the government officials are all there sitting, legislators, judiciary, executive, and a civilian is invited to come and give us your assessment of how we are performing, where should we be going, you follow, where we have been, give us from the outside how it looks. From outside, not the outside of society, but from outside of the government, right? From the powers that be, from the rulers, right? And that is a very important tradition in a republic.
Okay.
Because in a republic, the officials are supposed to be servants of the people. So then the people, representative or citizen, comes and tells them what they think. This is a tradition that is old in African culture. This is not just, it didn't start in 1847. There were people in villages around Liberia going back whose role was to be able to come and tell the chief. Sometimes it'll be on a particular day, come and tell the chief, this is what you're doing, not correct, blah, blah, blah. And the chief dare not touch them for what they have said. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So is there any I know you want to, I'll ask you to weigh in on this year's, but I still want to look at the past. Like,
Yes.
can you share any memorable moments or speeches from past July 26th oration that's mainly stood out for you? I know you mentioned Lehman's, which is in recent time.
Yeah.
What are some of the common themes that have been addressed on July 26th oration throughout history that reflect Liberian society changing priorities and challenges?
Yeah. I think the content of the addresses, they tend to reflect the issues of the day, of the moment, of the times. And so I mentioned, the first woman who came to speak,
Yeah,
and
I
she
got
was
that
speaking about
part.
the marginalization of women.
Yeah,
But then another one that comes to my mind
yeah,
is
that's if there are
this,
more.
Hillary Richard Wright Johnson was
Okay.
invited to speak. He had been a professor at he was a teacher at the Alexander High School, one of the best schools that was in the country. Then when Liberia College was established, he was at Liberia College as a professor. Blyden and people like him were students of Johnson. Anyway, Johnson was called to give the address, and he said, in the 1800s, the Christianity we are practicing in Liberia is Eurocentric. There needs to be in every culture, the religion, and Christianity is no exception, is clothed in the culture of that
Yeah.
place, that society.
Mm-hmm.
And our Christianity is Eurocentric, and
Yeah.
it needs to be stripped of that. You go to churches in Liberia and you'll see pictures of a Jesus that doesn't look anything like Liberians. How is that? Because people chose
Oh.
a model, an American. The artist who painted that picture picked his neighbor in the 1940s, 1950s, painted a portrait of that man as Jesus,
Yeah.
and the painting was printed millions of copies and passed out around the world. And so now we have that image locked in our minds that this is what Jesus looked like.
Mm-hmm.
No, nobody took a picture. And this is a painting that reflects the culture of a particular place. So Johnson was calling on that. Can you imagine the 1800s? And it was remarkable when Bishop Michael Francis became Archbishop of the Catholic Church in Liberia. Liberians were shocked to see the incorporation of Liberian culture into the Mass, and in Liberia, because the Vatican by that time had said, yeah, the cultures of the local Catholic churches should be reflected in the liturgy and in the worship ceremony. So we had drumming in the church, right, etc. Liberian songs in the church, etc.
Yeah.
So Johnson was ahead of his time, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wow. That's interesting to know. I didn't even know. I know a few years ago I did a post on Black Jesus, and there were a whole lot of questions. Why are you trying to cause people to stumble? So yeah, it's good to visit this kind of history and be like, oh wow, so somebody raised this before me. I'm not crazy.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Talking about incorporating our culture in a religion, I grew up in the Catholic Church. I remember when they started the Malimba parish in Pins, it's a EWA or somewhere on Raleigh area in
Mm-hmm.
Liberia.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm from South DC. I grew up in West Point, and I remember some of my parishioners arguing like, um, so they have Simolimba in crew. So they have Simolimba. We, the crew people, we welcome the Catholic Church in Liberia. And now they don't have Sinkofa and Sinimre and Sinamwe. And they have Simolimba, the church, Loma May Sin. That originated from, I think, somewhere Uganda also. But yeah,
Yes.
they were thinking that it was the Lomas, Molumba.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
that
I
was,
will share with you another aspect of that story, right?
yeah.
So my neighbors in childhood were from Grances, and around the time when the Vatican said that the Mass didn't have to be celebrating in Latin, you could use other European languages, French, English, whatever it was. In Liberia, we started using doing the Mass in English. So one of the uncles from Grandsons used to come to Monroe from time to time. And when he came, he was very religious. You have to go to Mass. But he expressed his profound displeasure with this new Vatican conducting the Mass in English. He said it's not a true Mass if it's not in Latin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's interesting to see how people can become assimilated in a way of worship, a way of doing things, and then they object to the change, to any kind of change.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so let's go to what your reactions are on Robtel. She too said not to call her doctor.
Okay.
Doctor, when I try every time I try to address her like that. So what are your thoughts on Robtel's recent address? In what ways do you think her speech aligns with or deviates from the traditional themes of the July 26th celebration? But it sounds like she was on point. But when it comes to in recent time when the government kind of took over now and the expectation, how did Robtel's speech deviate from that?
It deviated from the recent norm,
Yeah.
but as I try to suggest, it fits with the historical norm, right? The
Okay.
historical tradition.
Okay.
And it's not surprising to see the reaction of many. It's disappointing, but it's not surprising. The attacks that she has endured from some of our elders, in fact, and some people who have power, and they are using it against a person who tried to speak their truth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it's sad to see that, but not surprising because we have a tradition now, unfortunately, of attacking prophets, of people who have a prophetic vision. It's not unusual. I mean, read the Old Testament or you read some other, religious traditions, and you'll see that prophets are rarely popular.
No.
Yeah. So even if the king is not thinking about killing them, there will be people who will run to the palace and say, Chief, we need to kill everybody, they're making trouble. They're criticizing you, and that attitude, causes societies to stagnate. But I think she's not only following in a tradition regarding 26, but a really important tradition that in societies we need critics. We need people who are able to challenge us to be our best. And I think that's what she was trying to do.
Yeah.
Do you agree with everything she said? You don't have to. The point of it is, let me challenge you to think different.
Right? It's a new day, people. Think different.
Yeah.
And she said that reimagine. I'm going to be inciting. She refers to herself as but also as activist.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So are you ready for her to move on or
Did
any?
you ask me? You asked me about my reaction to the content.
Oh,
And I don't know if I answered you.
your reaction, your thoughts.
Yeah. I think that one of the unfortunate responses is a lot of the commentary in the newspapers, on social media, coming from Liberia, has been about the American charge d'affaires organizing a walkout, right? And then people focus on the passage that led to the walkout. To me, that's very unfortunate.
It is.
Because there are so many issues that were raised in the oration. The pay of the legislators should be cut, etc., etc., etc. I don't know if people took the time to actually read the speech or to watch it in its entirety. But
Really,
what has happened is that attention has come to be focused on a paragraph, and then the rest is overlooked. And I regard that as unfortunate, not only for Liberian society, but also for the interests of America in Liberia. Because by walking out, the charge d'affaires focus attention on that one issue.
Yeah.
And the result is now the people are taking sides. Yes, America has benefited more from Liberia than Liberia benefited from the U.S. No, they didn't. But back and forth, when we will be having a conversation about many, many different things, including the pay of legislators. And I'm encouraged, though, by the fact that young adults that I've spoken to have talked about other parts of the oration. I was at the embassy yesterday, and most of them didn't express a reaction to the American walkout necessarily, or if they did, it was like in passing, and then they went on to talk about the things that they liked most, and there were other things. So that's the unfortunate aspect to me.
Yeah, I seriously, like I spent my day at work. I got home. The first thing was to go into, the Association of Liberian Journalists room. I said, let me go into this professional space and see the analysis of, because I missed it. That was the first place I went. And that was the discussion. Then I was like, okay, I haven't read this thing. So Dr. Johnson, Samuel Johnson, sent it to me. And then he jokingly said, don't declare defiance. So I read it. When I read it, then I said, wait, all these great points, how are we I don't understand. But yeah, I share your, just to say, I share your reaction, because that was mine as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this thing is about us. This celebration is
Mm-hmm.
about us.
Mm-hmm.
How is it not about us?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So hopefully people go back to, read it, watch it, and reprocess.
Yes. Yes, I agree. And I thought that, the charge d'affaires could have, after the event, I'm sure the media would have come and asked, so what's your reaction to what was said about Liberia-U.S. relations? And then the charge d'affaires could have had one of two reactions, in my view. One, That's her opinion. We have ours. Case closed. Freedom
Me
of
too.
speech, right?
Yeah,
Freedom of speech.
me too.
Or um,
Or there was time for remark. Then she could have gone up.
or we will do an analysis of how Liberia has benefited from us and how we have benefited from Liberia. We'll collect the data. We have professional people who can do that, and we'll provide that to the Liberian people. Either it's an opinion and everybody has theirs, or we want to challenge the factual aspect of it, and we'll go and do the work. But just to walk out, to me, it was, it didn't reflect well.
Well, yeah, it didn't. Me too. It's like, and then I saw a statement that said we were trying to avoid the disruption or something. Like, how do you avoid that by doing that? How do you
Mm-hmm.
avoid
Mm-hmm.
whatever disturbance you were trying to avoid by doing exactly that? Like, there will have come a time for you to respond to this,
Yeah,
and maybe use that time to reinforce,
yeah.
reassure Liberians. Okay, we heard the orator, but just to assure you, we have a
Mm-hmm.
good relationship. We believe in what we have, or this
Mm-hmm.
is how we see it. Or, like you said, we were going to this. So, someone and I were talking to her, like, oh, maybe she felt she was afraid, because people were clapping and booing. Maybe they were going to attack them. I say, I also thought of that. So, for me, maybe you're going to be when I come out and say, oh, I left because I was feeling unsafe, even though I still don't see how living in that moment was okay. But again, I'm not on the ground. So, but I left because of this reason. Oh, their diplomacy, they're not going to say it. I say, okay. But then they're going to double down by saying, the speech was divisive. So, how is that diplomacy as well?
Mm-hmm.
So, I
Mm-hmm.
think there are just other ways that we could have just gone about this whole thing.
Yeah.
But then again, few years ago, I think what 2021, we're all staying home, or 21, I was doing master's class with Condoleezza Rice and Madeline Upright. And it had a lot of case studies and instances of saying when you blunder as a diplomat, and how they were able to fix things during the years
Mm-hmm.
that they serve.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um Madeline Albright gave this really great example with somewhere she blundered that were put and they were always not happy with countries they went to, like Russia, the
Mm-hmm.
engagement with Putin, like
Mm-hmm.
Libya. Condoleezza Rice talked about an interaction with the late Gaddafi.
Mm-hmm.
So I think maybe it has to do with experience or
Yeah.
temperament, or
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just a lot of
Indeed.
different things. But yeah, unfortunately, it happened. But I think Liberians, we should just refocus, check
Yeah.
out the message, and reprocess the thing.
I'm so glad that this oration was offered and pronounced in public. It will be discussed for years to come. Whether Raptel ever speaks again, or writes again, or does anything again, she has earned a place in our history, in my view, as a historian, right? It doesn't matter if you agree, you don't agree. Well, the fact of the matter is, she said something, and said many things actually that will be on the record for eternity. Okay,
Mm.
so what she had to do was to fulfill the role that a lot of my peers, those of us who are elders, should have been performing, giving advice that you could say the advice might be more diplomatic because you're older, you know, but giving truthful, honest, accurate advice across the board. The legislature, more highly paid than the legislators in the US, being able to say in their wisdom that this is too much. In an impoverished society, we must take action. Nobody should have to criticize us. Nobody should have to pressure us. We, the elders, right? The wise ones in the Senate must step up and perform as perform the roles that we should. And we will recognize that the pay is too high, the benefits that we're collecting, we will cut it. But because my peers and the elders in the societies are not doing this, it falls to a young
Yeah.
woman. Then when she performs the role, those elders turn around
Yeah.
and they want to bring brimstone and hellfire on her.
Like the one we were talking about this morning, you and I, before we came on.
And how inappropriate. Can you imagine my daughter
You want to debate?
goes out and speaks, and then I will go and jump on her in public, right? Or one of their daughters. I can't. I'm not raised that. It's not culturally appropriate.
Yeah.
But our elders are not performing in a culturally appropriate way. So here I want to just say a little side issue about culture. We'll move to the press, please. A lot of us assume, right, that every dead body is an ancestor. Everybody who passes becomes an ancestor. It's not true. Just like in the Catholic tradition, everybody who passes is not a saint.
Not a saint, yeah.
Yes. But this question of who ascends to the status of ancestor, it starts in your lifetime. And so not every elder is wise in our culture. So when you reach a certain age, the expectation is you are supposed to perform befitting your age. But if you're not, it's like, look at this old fool. You know, it's embarrassing. It's like you're walking around acting like a child, or you're bringing shame on the village, on the society, right? How inappropriate. And I think that's part of the challenge, that we've gotten away from, some maybe because of the war and the destruction and stuff. So we have, ritual masquerades begging for money, and then we have elders who are performing like kids when they should be, I think, playing a very different role in regards to speaking truth. But I just mean,
Yeah. Hopefully this was another great learning opportunity. Sorry,
indeed,
I was just
indeed,
going through this whole thing. Just took me back to one of my textbooks that I got from the master's class that I say I did with these great women. And
yeah,
then I was just reading about how to fix your mess when you
yeah,
sleep on your diplomatic mission. I was like, hopefully the US embassy look into that and just try to correct codes instead of
yeah,
covering up by doubling down and making the whole thing worse. Like
yes,
it wasn't okay at all to take away from our national event like that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So if you just joining us, oh, we have Dr. Kai Patrick Burrowes. Dr. Burrowes, you have to really squeeze your Patrick Alamein, but after this, I promise I will call you that. We have him with us, a great historian. This is a living icon. So we're blessed in our time to be able to sit under the palm tree, palaver her in your living room, see it as TV wherever you are to listen to his wisdom. I feel so privileged to be sitting here and doing the questions, being the one that giving him the questions. So thank you, thank you. This is a community service. I consider it a community service that you are providing to us. Because I know you're good people like you go to places where they are paid for speaking. So thank you for coming on a new day on Focus on Liberia and honoring us.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to go now to the book on about the power and the press freedom in Liberia. Did your motivation to write about the power and the press freedom in Liberia stem from your journalism background?
Yes, indeed. So, yes, a little bit about my background. When I was a freshman in college, a group of us, my peers, my mates, that was 1971, we decided we would establish a little magazine. It was called a Revelation. So, Revelation would bring out the things that are hidden. Right? And it was the first non-government owned medium at the time. So President Tubman died. President Tolbert came. He said, "Oh, he wanted to open things up," and we thought, "Oh, we will go forward and take that opportunity." So we started this publication. Uh, a New York Times reporter came to Liberia and wrote about it, and he said, "Wow, this is an opening of free expression, where non-government media are coming up." So that was my one engagement. Subsequently, I was manager of the campaign of Emma Sawyer for mayor of Monrovia. So that was another exercise of, not just freedom of expression, but assembly and so forth, right? And then when the coup took place, and this is the last anecdote I'll share before I get to the point. When the coup took place, I had gone with Elizabeth Blunt from BBC and a Nigerian reporter who was in Liberia covering things. We went to file our stories at the through telex at the Liberia Telecommunications Center back in the day before internet. And so driving back, it was broad daylight, no curfew or time yet. A soldier was crossing Capitol Bypass by himself. He seemed tipsy from the way he was moving, and he pointed his rifle at the car and said, "Pull over." I was driving. Pull over. He came. He said, "Elizabeth Blunt should get out of the car and go with him." Why? He said, "Oh, the people came here to make a counter coup against the PRC." But, I mean, how would you, average on soldier by yourself, be able to investigate who is doing what and what? No, we came from filing stories. We are reporters. We must show her ID. She should follow him.
Oh,
So
wow.
as he's walking with her with a gun behind her, I got out of the car, walked behind him, trying to talk him out of whatever it is. And he pointed the gun to me. Then when I stopped talking, he pointed back to her and tell her to go. In the midst of that, in that moment when one didn't know if life was coming to an end or not, SUV came around and it was filled with higher ranking soldiers.
Hmm.
They saw him with her, pull over, what's going on. They recognized Elizabeth Blunt. They said, "Put a man in the car. They're going to carry him to put in the stockade." Embarrassing the country, blah, blah, blah. And we got in the car and I took the other reporters home. It was a traumatic experience. When I came back to the States, I already had my master's and I came back here to do my PhD. I went to meet my advisor, the person I wanted to direct my study. And I said, "I follow your work and I wanted you to serve as my advisor." He said, "I don't have time to waste. So tell me why you want to do this project. Why you want to look at press freedom in Liberia. And when I explained what I just told you, he was like, okay, I'll do it. And that was the motivation. Concrete experience, trying to practice journalism, and and realizing that freedom of expression has limits, what condition brings about those limitations, etc. That's what led to my work.
Wow. What an experience. I'm glad that you are alive today to share that with us. Um,
God bless
yeah,
you.
and even though it wasn't a good one, but it sounds scary. But it was able to get out of you this kind of great work. Sometimes I trust
Oh
sometimes
yeah,
atrocities,
oh yeah.
sometimes
Trauma.
unfortunate situations, trauma,
Yeah,
um, produce the best out of us. And I
yeah.
really love that work. I read a few years ago.
Mm,
Yeah. And then I went back to it recently. I always go back to it. I have a PDF saved in my Google Doc. So thank you for
mm,
doing that work.
thank you.
So, can you elaborate on the role of the first newspapers in shaping press freedom in Liberia, the impact on media and society, and the challenges faced during its early years?
Yeah. So um, the first newspaper in Liberia was founded by a man named John Rosworm.
Yeah,
And Rosworm, um, most American historians know him as the co-founder of the very first black-owned newspaper in America. So that paper was founded in 1827, and Rosworm had just graduated from college, one of the first people of African descent to attend a college in the United States at a time when most people of European descent were not going to college. So it was historic. So he co-founds this paper in the US. They operate for about a year and a half. And then he decides, you know what, this is not working. And he immigrates to Liberia. And he starts a newspaper called the Liberia Herald. Some of the things that Rosworm was publishing in the paper he founded in the US was, for example, African history, publishing about ancient Egypt as an African civilization. He in one editorial, he said a lot of ignorant things are said about Africa, but what we will do is we'll collect the best information we can get to refute some of that ignorance. And so people who are on the ground, if they send a letter or they send information or he read something somewhere, he will publish it in the US. So the Herald was founded in Liberia as a first paper in 1830. One of the people Rosworm had championed while he was editing that paper was Prince Abdul Rahman, right? Suri, who was a Fulani prince captured as a young man, brought to the US, enslaved in Mississippi. But people there knew about his background. And he would write in Arabic and all of this. And so there had always been this effort to say this man should be returned. And Rosworm supported a campaign for people to raise money, pay the person who had enslaved him so that Abdul Rahman would leave. And ultimately he left, he went to Liberia. So he went there when he wrote Rosworm, and Rosworm came, and so Rosworm was a broad-minded individual, right? And they start publishing. One of the things you'll find is there's very little of what we call news in our newspapers. There was a lot of analysis,
Oh my God.
and I'm saying sophisticated.
Mm.
So, as a historian, and I will say this is true for most historians of Liberia, when they go to write about how people were living, crew culture, or Basa, or Vi, they are usually taking that material from the Liberian newspapers of the time. That's the kind of thing that people are writing about. What would today be regarded as ethnography or all those things were in the paper. They were writing about geopolitics, all of those kinds of things. Sophisticated. Now, we don't appreciate the fact that back then, for newspapers to be printed, right, you had to set the type, one letter after the other. The letters would be in a case, A, B, C, D, E. So you want to spell T-H-E, you take the T from the case, you put a T, you take the H, you put it next to it, you put an E next to it. It was a laborious process to publish a 6-sheet paper, right?
Yeah.
So those guys had to do that. If you go and look at the newspapers from then, you see very few typographical errors. Amen.
Yeah. Even
people took pride in what they were doing. They saw it as a reflection of themselves. All right, so that was one. The quality of the printing, the absence of grammatical errors for the most part, and then the subject matter that they were writing about. So when you get the paper starting in 1830, by the time you get to the early 1840s, now the question becomes, should we declare independence? Hey, you can imagine people writing back and forth. Sophisticated analysis. If we do this, it will not work, and here's why. And then mainly it was Hilary Teach pushing back and saying, he was the editor, he had replaced Roswell, and saying, I know we need to do this, and here are the reasons. Eventually people became convinced, mostly through the newspaper. And that continued throughout all, the old newspapers that I was able to access in different libraries and what have you. The tradition was mainly publishing analysis of the world and Liberia's place in it, and then events in Liberia as well. And later on, then you start to have more news stories, right, of the day, of the events happening at that time.
Okay. So how did globalization, because in your work you talk about, okay, so how did globalization and civil society influence media government relations in Liberia during this period? And there were some tensions, but talk about that.
Yeah, so civil society was independent. I'm talking here about journalists. I'm talking about pastors.
That's what I was going to say. Sounded like the church was more involved,
Church was
especially
very,
the
very,
Methodist church.
very involved. It was not this kind of prosperity gospel, so we need to build a new, bigger cathedral, temple, blah, 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 bring money. The pastor needs a new car, whatever. And so there was a president who divorced. His wife got married, divorced her, got married. And one of the bishops took him to task. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, that speech by the bishop was a 26 oration.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Bishop were acting like John the Baptist, huh?
Oh, yeah. Called him out. And so civil society was very active. It was locally rooted. People were not depending on money from donors or, it was local. And so we saw where over time things changed. The tendency too often, unfortunately, is to say that when things change, it's all because of the local situation. because this politician, that politician, this president, whoever, was a bad person. The reality is that the push towards government control of the media, which began in the 40s, extended up to the 70s, was happening in many parts of the world. And it didn't matter if the country was allied with the US or they were allied with the Russians or the Soviet Union or whoever. This tendency for governments to control the media was par for the course. It was accepted. So that's one way in which globalization had a kind of negative effect. And journalists were struggling, to be able to express themselves in a way that had been in the past and that they needed to in that environment. Fortunately, we saw a global shift, and that encouraged change, in Liberia as well.
Okay, so were there laws and social attitudes that hindered press freedom? And what were Liberia's foremost legal and societal obstacles to press freedom between 1830 to 1970?
So initially in the 1800s, I could find no instances where journalists were punished for
Okay.
anything that they wrote. Yeah. So,
Okay.
there were laws about libel.
What
Um,
about in terms of economic constraints?
yeah,
Also,
the economic constraints were intense, but on the society as a whole.
Okay.
These are relatively underdeveloped society.
So it was not
Um,
like government crackdowns.
yeah, putting pressure on the newspapers. I didn't find evidence of that kind of behavior at all.
Okay.
It would have been there would have been a backlash because the public identified the press as providing an important function and service for them.
Okay.
When I talked earlier about orators being critics or providing a prophetic vision, the
Mm-hmm.
journalists did that on a regular basis.
Okay.
Here's what we need to be thinking about. This is how we're falling short. Oh, the government shouldn't have done this, they should have done that. So for you to go and touch the prophets, it would have backlash against you.
Mm.
You the king, you the ruler, your government. Do your thing and leave the other role, right? The people to function in the role, the capacity that they should. But things began to change dramatically in the 1940s,
Yeah.
and we saw that not just in reference to the press, but then we saw in 1955 crackdown against political opposition, and leaders of that party were killed. Political violence erupted, and it really was a dramatic and traumatic experience for the society. It wasn't until the 1970s that we begin to see a shift away from that. By 79, there were two political parties registered in Liberia. UPP, United People's Party, formed by PAL, Progressive Alliance of Liberia, and the LPP, formed by the MOJA, Movement for Justice in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was the old Churi Party. So there were three parties by 1979.
Yeah. So, what lessons can contemporary societies learn from Liberia's history of press freedom? Just give us a comparative analysis of, maybe, if you
Yeah,
can, of current press freedom issues, universal principles of media freedom, and their application today.
yeah. I really feel that we've lost sight of a lot of good aspects of our traditions because we want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Uh, and so I wasn't there to know about the level of corruption, if there was. But I can tell you that from being in Liberia recently, the corruption of journalists is profoundly not only disappointing but disruptive to how society, right,
Mhm.
should function.
I agree.
People will publish if you pay $20 even, really
Oh my
minimum
word.
amounts. Yeah.
Is it because
And
of poverty? I don't want to make excuses for them, but I mean, why is it? Why does it sound that bad?
but I would say that journalists before them were they had less income. So I don't get
And
excuses.
they still did a great job,
And they did their
right?
job. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it
Okay.
was the attitude has become entrenched. But when we take ourselves as professionals, journalists and other people performing functions in the society,
So you say that they were more educated those days. Do
I
you think
will
that's a
argue
factor,
that I would argue
or they were more
that
driven for change?
that the issue is cultural,
You think so?
and the culture I'm talking about is this culture of hierarchy. Big Brabby, what you got for me? You understand me? Eh? Your Excellency. And see, earlier when I was saying, in a republic, we should call each other by our name, on the street and in public forum.
Hmm.
In our offices, it's a different thing. Use the title because it encourages a sort of slavish mentality, right? To those who are higher in the hierarchy. And it destroys what is necessary in a republic of equals, of citizens.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that's how the journalists see themselves now. They are many. I don't want to paint everybody with a bad brush. Some outstanding journalists there, but many of them they see themselves as mouthpieces, right? And they will run and get whatever small is something. And I can imagine right now what's going on. People hustling.
Wow.
Bobby, what you got anything to say against that Robtech girl? Give me 20, let me go put it in the paper or
Hmm.
put it online. And I think that culture, journalists need to get to a point, and those journalists back then, to see themselves as performing an essential function for the society and a function that is as important as the role of the legislature and the judiciary. When you see yourself on that level, you're not going to be.
Well, I think the media is even on that level because is it the U.S. Constitution or somewhere I read that there are three branches and then the media is mentioned as the fourth estate because they're
Yeah.
almost, yeah, because citizens consider them as almost equal with running of any society like the government.
No,
They
the fourth
they,
estate is
they
a term
provide
that
the
has
check
been
and
applied to
balance.
the media historically, before the
Yeah,
American Constitution, actually.
yeah.
And it
I
was
don't
deemed that
or
way.
somewhere.
It was titled that way. The French, when they had their estates, three estates of French society, the clergy was one. They came up with the notion of the fourth estate. It has permeated around the world. But yeah, it reflects the idea that the press, the role of the press is on par. It should be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
should be.
Yeah.
So why are we at you know brought ourselves, or should we blame poverty? I don't know. Uh,
Uh, Let me say
because
this.
the
I
policeman will
think
say, but
that,
that's why I'm not taking pay too. So that's why
yeah.
I will harass the taxi driver. And then somebody else will say, well, I'm not taking, pay too. So that's why I'm doing it wrong. So yeah, it's just hard to say why.
No, I would say that for me, one of the big reasons for the change was the introduction of political violence,
Oh, okay.
right? So when you have a man with a automatic rifle point a gun at you on the street and say, do this, don't do this, pump tire, etc., you begin to see the disintegration of people's sense of self, their dignity.
Okay.
Then it gets to the level of war. And it's about survival, hustle, where I'll get food.
Survivor, yeah.
But now that we have entered this period of peace, I think it's important to reclaim, to question where we find ourselves, right? And how do we get out of it? And I argue that one of the values of the 26th oration is the call for dignity.
And that's
Also
what
embrace our dignity
that's
in
what
local society and as individuals, as journalists.
yeah, and that's what this year's that's what she was talking about. Just like this, what do you call it? That technique. She talked about all of those things, corruption in a society to the extent where we say, oh, some of the excuses we make. Oh, Liberia, that technique, and what again?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. Hopefully the media raise our things. I don't want to take myself out of it above that place. I understand the struggle is real and
Yeah.
poverty is real.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a serious issue. So I think if there is anything else that we didn't touch on that you want to before we get to that, let me announce to people that we will have you back, if not next Sunday, but we sure will have you back to talk about I'm supposed to have it close to me here. The book that in audience, I said you have few weeks to get a copy of the book.
Liberian Quest for Freedom.
Yeah, the other half. Do
Yeah.
you have it?
That
Can you
I've been
please
doing.
show it?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, because I could just grab mine. Yeah, I took it to work. Yep.
Yeah. I just showed it.
All right, good. So we will be talking about that. We'll be talking yes, my copy, my light is there.
Oh, okay.
So we'll
Okay.
be talking about this one. The next time we have Patrick on with us. Woo, I said it. The next time
Yes.
we have Patrick
Yes.
on with
Yes.
us.
Yes.
So please get yourself a copy. Go to Know Yourself. I had it on it. I had it up. I had it up.
But
Go
Priscilla,
to his
today we didn't
website.
get many comments from the audience
Oh, yeah, I think we just got a
or
few. Let me see.
questions or.
I'm following from Samson.
Okay. Okay.
Samson.
Yeah.
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 Samson say, I'm following from Kakata City, Mangibi, County, Liberia. That very nice. Thank you, Samson,
Thank you,
for
Samson.
joining us.
Thank
And
you.
then who again? Okay. And then someone's using Rocktel as the profile. Dware G Dware Wamwa.
One. Yeah.
Yeah.
The
G
prophet
Dware,
tells the
I'm
truth.
saying your name right. Yeah. He said the prophet tells the truth, he or she, the prophet tells the truth regardless of status. Yeah.
He. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Amen.
that's what Patrick was saying. That's the whole spirit behind this oration thing that today has turned to
Yeah.
clapping and singing praises. So go to their website, get yourself copies. Did you say 15% discount?
Yep. Yep.
And
15%
then what
discount.
is the code you say they should use?
That's it. Focus on Liberia. It's a code.
Okay.
Yeah.
Focus on Liberia is a code of FOL, and then get that. And then Genevieve say thanks. Genevieve Woods, S.
Yeah.
Woods say thanks for the education of the Burrowes. I just learned something that I didn't know. Isn't there always something to learn from him,
Amen.
Genevieve? Thank you for joining us again today. And then back to Colette.
Hmm.
Sounds
Oh
like
wow.
it will be
Yeah. Let me
great.
see. Yeah.
But to say the missionaries made sure of that. I think it was when you were talking something. They refused to let Liberians even beat drums or do culturally relevant things. Yeah, I think it evolved later. But
Yeah.
maybe there used to be a time they probably did that. I think that's what he was talking about.
Yeah. And it's ironic, because now that the culture has been infused into our practices, right, our religious practices, the Christianity is reaching more people.
I
You
know.
follow me? I
Yeah.
mean, when you're singing in Basel or in a local language, right,
Mm-hmm.
you're delivering the message to more people.
Mm-hmm.
But that idea that no, you can only sing it in this way and you can only sing it in this language, it limited, the capacity for uh, the message to spread.
Yeah,
Yeah,
people can connect through the mother's tongue.
yeah,
Yeah, more. And the Redeemed Christian Church of God is predominantly Nigerian. We were going for, I live in Arizona, so the church
mhm,
here was going for joint concert and to LA. And then this sister of China encouraged to come along. And she was like, no, I'm not going to spend my time going over there to be singing Oyibo or Oyibo, the white man's song. She was like, be singing Oyibo all day. If they're going to, are they going to be singing African? Are they going to be singing some Nigerian song? And I was like, wait, is that? But that was her own reason for
yeah,
no, like I don't feel
yeah,
the service. I'm not going to go to a musical concert with our choir being a part because it was a regional something, and we're all um conversion in LA, and she was like, I'm not going to go all the way over there if we're just going to be all Oyibo. So
yeah.
yes, I agree with you.
When we're talking about Christianity, I'll drop something here. It's not about Liberia per se, but to just share with the audience that Europeans at one time were doing the same thing. That it was illegal for anyone to translate the Bible into English in England. The Bible was in Latin. It was regarded that Latin was sacred. And so those who initially translated the Bible from Latin into English were ordered to be killed by the king of England. And the punishment was the most severe. He said they should tie them to horses, each horse,
Mm,
one hand, one leg,
mhm.
tear them apart, then
Mm.
burn the bodies and their
Uh,
limbs, and put the ashes in a river so that there will be no place where they are buried. People can come and pay their respects to them. And this was happening in many parts of Europe where do not sing the hymns in English or any European language. It was always Latin. So they changed it and embraced their cultures. But then when we do, then people will say, what are you doing? And the early church spread first to Egypt and Ethiopia and Nubia before it went to Rome. And St. Augustine was in North Africa. But we lose sight of the fact that the Bible, there's an Ethiopian version of the Bible with more books in it. Because Ethiopia embraced Christianity
from the
long before
Coptic
Europe.
Christians.
Yeah, before Europe. So when we understand these things, I think it can help us to put practices into context, historical and otherwise.
Yeah, I don't remember her name. This scholar that was talking about anthropologist that was talking about um when
Sam has a
people
question.
when
Sam
people
Wallo.
yeah, Sam Wallow say who or which office previews or vets the orator's prepared speech and clears it for delivery on Independence Day?
Nobody, no one is supposed to do that. Again, Sam, I don't know if you are on the watching earlier, but the reality is that the role of the government, of the rulers, is supposed to be separate from the role of civil society, of the prophets.
Of the people who supposed to provide check and balance are supposed to be the conscience of society. Oh, yeah.
Exactly. So why would you even want for the government to clear or vet or preview what a prophet is coming to say? I don't know if you're a Christian or Muslim or whatever your religious practice might be and faith, but where in the Quran or in the Bible you'll find that
Your
prophets
pastor submit.
are being
Yeah.
sanctioned by the king. Like tell me what you're going to say first before you go and
Before
say it.
you say, yeah.
No, 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 no. We do that and we go down a sliding slope.
Yeah. Yeah. Someone asked that same question, like I say, in a space I was. Like they're supposed to be looking at people's speeches. I say, what do we want to really come to self-censorship? Why should we do that? Then what the need of even having orator?
Then we will say all that the journalists must send all their news stories to the Ministry of Information. Let them
Yeah,
approve it before you publish.
before, yeah.
What do we believe in freedom of speech or not? Is that a constitutional right? Or is it a right only for praise singers?
Yeah. Yeah, it was even all online. So somebody, oh, that's irresponsible and reckless of the government not to have checked what the orator would say before they allow. And I'm like, I just go past. I say, yeah, this is, but I'm glad that you responded to that. So G. Dwell said, the oration was the best I've heard in my lifetime.
Amen. Amen. Agree.
And then someone say Melvin Dishale. Melvin Dishale said one of Liberia's fundamental faults is the missing link of history and the misinterpretation of the rules and constitutional law. Thanks, Patrick, for a lesson well received.
Thank you for your feedback, Melvin. Yeah. Yeah, so you were asking me earlier, Priscilla. It seemed like we're coming to wrap it up
Yeah.
about the book, the research, right?
Well, before you get to that, I was saying about when you said there was a time that in England people were told it was a sin, or it kind of like they felt it would dilute the sacredness of the scripture, the deity, or whatever they believe in. If
Mm-hmm.
it was it was translated into other languages. So I was talking about the anthropologist who was telling us about how how the European and Arabs and everyone, the others who brought the religion, made us feel inferior about African religion. That every group of people, everybody who brings a religion or present a religion, feels special about himself or herself,
Mm-hmm.
because yeah, that's why. And I was like, yeah, that's why we think the Jews are special people, because God came through them. So it's part of making you feel inferior. It's part of the European supremacy, which another scholar say is, it says, is European white and dominance, um is telling us that we can only access God, we can only know God, or the God we can serve is the one that presented to us. Ours is not a real God. And so it has an effect on your psyche. See, you see them as special people and people to aspire to. And that's just putting blacks and African, kind of the same thing you addressed last time, but
Mm-hmm.
in a different language. So yeah, so sometimes when we need to see it like that, when we are being told, oh, you can say this in African in your language, or you can access Christianity with African consciousness, because otherwise you'll be diluting it. Why should Europeans do that? Why should they mix Christianity with their culture? Why can't we do the same? The same thing. Why should Arabs insist that the Quran should only be in Arabic? Why can't we access Allah in Kru, in
Mhm.
Pro,
Mhm.
in Grebo?
Mhm. Mhm.
So yeah, so that's
Yeah.
something to think about.
And one of the things I think that we get uh, wrong, Liberians that is say Europeans, Christianity came from Europeans, right? It's a European religion, and quite frankly, it's not. So Christianity developed. Let's remember that when Harold was looking for Jesus in the New Testament, his parents took the child to Egypt,
Egypt.
and he lived there for years. You think that in those years of his formative years, he was not shaped by the culture of North Africa? When they had the you see, we don't know the Bible, we don't take it in historical context, or we don't read the commentaries and the context of it, and many of our pastors don't share
Mm-mm.
these important parts of it with us. So on the day of Pentecost, the house that the disciples and Christ were in was the house of St. Mark's mother, and she was from North Africa, and Mark was. And so after the crucifixion, Mark went to Egypt and he began preaching. Mark did not have an army to coerce anybody, but he carried a message, and the message spread. And there were Egyptians who converted, and there are Coptics. The Coptic Church of Egypt is founded by St. Mark. And then the Nubians, and then the Ethiopians, right, embraced the message without being forced. So if you look at the Ethiopian churches, the artwork, you look at the Ethiopian Bible, the artwork, the saints look like Ethiopians. They don't paint Jesus as a European.
Mm-mm.
Now, after the religion had taken root in Africa, Christianity had taken root and been embraced, became the dominant religion in Ethiopia, it spreads to Europe. It enters England, Sweden, and these places later. But now look at this. By the time the Portuguese come to us in the 1400s, they come with this false sense that
So
it's
superior.
their religion.
Mm-hmm.
Now, their understanding of it is completely different, because now they're coming and saying that it's okay for us to be enslaved. Really? That's a message of the Bible? And so the religion of St. Mark was the Christianity of St. Mark was like a lamb, whereas the Christianity of the Portuguese and others who came later was like a lion, devouring, Africans, and insisting that we change the culture and that we make it resemble the way they looked. So I think that's an important piece of Christian history for Liberian Christians to understand, that Christianity came to Africa, was nurtured in Africa before it spread out to the continent of Europe.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me go to somebody else question that they have. Um, he says, Melvin D. Shield say we have to deal with the loss of 4 generations relating to the mindset of the people. The question is, how can we as a people make these corrections? We have to deal with the loss of 4 generations relating to the minds of the people. The question is, how can we as a people make these corrections?
Wow. Um, the logical place would be through the schools, but I think most of us know that our schools have not been functioning well for quite a while, decades, after the end of the war. And it is particularly profoundly sad for some of us who are the products of Liberian schools. And when I remember when I came here and my peers came, we could take the SAT without any problem, based on the education we received in Liberia, right? I happen to have gone to a Catholic school, and among the different things, we studied Latin, and it helped. At the time, I hated it, but it helps
What
you
high
to
school did you
understand
get?
the
What
root
school did
of
you go
these
to?
words, and so forth. Very,
Patrick,
yep.
what school did you go to?
Oh, St. Patrick's. They named the school after me. Don't mind me. But yeah, so I went to St. Patrick, and the
Okay.
education was on par with education wherever, anywhere else, right? But if you go to Liberia today, the schools of the mainline churches that used to offer a high quality education, high quality in terms of discipline, in terms of academics, right? And in terms of moral education, ethics, they are reduced. Yeah, absolutely reduced. Cuttington was once regarded as the Harvard of Africa,
Oh,
high
wow.
quality. So it would logically be through the schools, but it hasn't happened. I would just share with you my own experience, and other people might have other solutions for what should be done. On my journey as a professional academic, I spent most of my years writing and publishing in academic journals for my peers to read, other scholars to read. They were not necessarily Liberians. Okay. I reached a point in my life, I said, you know what? I need to write for Liberians. If I'm writing the history of Liberia, Liberians need to know this. So I made a decision that even though a non-Liberian publisher wanted to publish the Kola Forest book, at one moment I woke up and said, don't do that. It would never reach Liberians. Not because the publisher wouldn't care, they don't know how. And at that point, it was like, I'll have to do this. So I ended up having to publish the book. And I had no idea the journey that went ahead, what laid ahead. Book was published. I started getting invited to come and speak in different Liberian communities in the States. And then people saw on social media, I was in Minnesota, the people in Dallas called and said, oh, you come and speak here. And it went like that. By the time I got to Liberia, one of the talks, there were 300 people in the hall. That was the capacity of the hall, 300. And there were people standing against the wall. So there's a hunger for knowing the history that we have not been given. You follow me? And this was an eye-opening experience. I'm learning about Liberia as I'm going on this journey. And guess what? At some point, I had to realize that it's good if I can sell books. A lot of young people will come and they say, Doc, I really want to know the content of this book. I really want to understand our history before it's $100. I don't have the money. So, okay, here's a copy. Yeah, I'll sign the ticket. So you. So then I started giving away books to young Liberians. But our school system is so bad that it's hard for the kids to read. And then I started doing videos, right, interviews. So the point I reached in my life is that whatever knowledge I have, share it in whatever way that it can get out to the generations that he said are missing generation or lost generations, because they want the information. They just haven't been provided it through the schools or elsewhere.
Yeah. Sam Wallace say Albert Port was fearless in this regard. I don't know what
Amen. So I would say yes, Sam, you are absolutely right. Right.
he said.
Albert Port was a school teacher uh, and one-time principal who would write occasional essays, not news stories, essays that were published. He self-published them, and they were critical of government. Again, that prophetic vision. But he was writing during Tubman's time, and they started to punish him. He had been writing from before Tubman. He wasn't being harassed and punished. And it came a point where Port used to carry a small bag with him wherever he went, with a toothbrush, soap, in case they put him in jail.
Wow.
They took his job, his teaching job from him. But he was incorruptible. So when the journalists in Liberia today tell me, say, well, but man, what would do, times hard, we got to take small something. What about Albert Port? And when I mentioned the Revelation magazine that my peers and I founded, Albert Port was one of the people who published, Yeah.
Yeah. Emmanuel would say Abaport was a man of integrity. You just what you might
Amen.
call about that. Sam, you responded to Sam's question already.
Yeah.
Can you share a few of the consequences Port faced? And like you said, he
He
put
went to
into
jail.
yeah.
Mhm.
Alexander Stevens said, "Good morning. I'm watching from Minnesota. Thank you, Alexander
Thanks, Alexander.
Stevens." I didn't even realize there are a lot of comments down there. Anthony Russell
Oh,
Jr. said, "Good afternoon. I'm watching from MDV. I don't know what that is. MDV,
DMV, that's DC, Maryland, Virginia.
DMV."
Yeah. Yes.
Um, Eddie Tom say, "What effect did the good year now their name is Bridgestone have on the Liberia economy, race, and travel relations?" I don't know
Wow.
how it relates to what we're talking about. Sam
Wow.
Wallace said, "Thanks for that." So then it would not be surprising for the diplomat to walk out because it could be interpreted as a government endorsement of the content.
How come? How would you reach
I
that
don't know.
conclusion?
I
Okay.
don't know.
I'm
I,
sorry, Sam.
I don't.
Nothing that I said should have
Yeah,
been
I don't
interpreted
know
that way.
where that comes
Yeah.
from. So then it would not be surprising to where. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's why most times I like to proofread them before I put them out.
Mhm.
Alexander
All right.
Stevens said, all Liberians should be proud of the 177 years independence speech because it speaks volumes in our time. I agree. Alexander Stevens, I agree. And then Alexander Stevens again. The best part of the speech for me is that when the orator spoke about the legislature and their alarming problem. Okay, so somebody took something that was not what is being popular. So I'm glad that someone took something else, and I think other people took different things from
Absolutely.
this speech. So that's good. That's good. All right, so if
Yeah.
you want to wrap up now, but you took something you're going to wrap up, and I wanted to finish with.
Basically, regarding this book, one of the things that
Oh, that's the book.
yeah,
Book.
that I learned, and
Please show it again. Show it again. Let them see it.
absolutely. So, press freedom,
Yeah.
power and press freedom in Liberia. Power and press freedom. Again, power, the state, the government, press, the prophetic, critical vision, civil society, and having a balance, right? But yeah, but in doing that research, one of the things I realized, and I think it's really critical for Liberians to appreciate, is that history does not happen in a straight line. The
It's
thing we
non-linear.
call Liberia evolve like we
I
individuals evolve. So the Liberia of 1822 to 1847, when it was a colony, operated in a way that was very different from the Liberia of 1847 to, say, the late 1800s. Okay? The limit, the northern border of Liberia until the late 1800s was Millsburg on the St. Paul River. That's, I don't know, 20 miles or so from the coast, from the ocean.
Okay.
Lofa was not part of Liberia. Grand Judea was not part of Liberia. Nimba was not part of Liberia at that time. So Liberia changed in response to the scramble for Africa, the European scramble. When in Berlin, people met and they said, we'll divide Africa among us. You take this piece, I'll take that piece, etc. And the pressure began to build. Parts of Liberia, that areas of Liberia claimed, ended up in British or French territory. Okay. So until then, until the early 1900s, so we're talking almost 100 years of existence, Liberia didn't have an army. Every town had a militia. And that was the case in Fishtown, in Buchanan, in Big Necess, every part of Liberia. If there was a conflict, the community would mobilize the young men, the men of a certain age, and they'll go and defend the place, the town, defend the community, whatever. So that was the standard until the scramble for Africa, and Liberia ended up creating the Frontier Force. The Frontier Force brought a lot of problems. And we don't have the time to go into them now, but let's recognize that that was the case. But to think that the problems of the Frontier Force could be imposed backwards, it is illogical. You understand? And then Liberia would change in the 1930s. You know, Firestone is established. King is pushed out of office, CDB King. A very dramatic development. And then Liberia changes. And then it starts to move in a different direction. You know, Firestone comes, and then later on the mining companies come and so forth. That Liberia is not like the Liberia of 1910. It's not like the Liberia of 1847. So I think really one of the things that's missing is an understanding that this thing we call Liberia has evolved, it has changed. And there are many shortcomings and weaknesses of this experience. Liberia have been criticized for time immemorial by American scholars, American journalists, American diplomats, because of the shortcomings. But there's also a positive side to this story, many, many positive aspects to this story that need to be heralded. So it's surprising that if the U.S. relationship with Liberia is called into question by a Liberian scholar,
he said, let's just reimagine it.
Overwhelming, extreme reaction to this person speaking, and it's like shut them down. But if you read most books published in the U.S. by American scholars or articles about Liberia, you're going to find some extremely negative, things that are said about the culture and about the people and about the corruption. But rarely do you hear that, but there's this Liberian who has been incorruptible. Can we look at the examples that stand out? Look at LU under somebody like Mary Antoinette Sherman. On par with universities, I would say, anywhere in the world. When we hold up the good examples, we strive to come back to that level and to go beyond. But if we keep holding up the negative
I know.
is defeatist.
I agree.
And I think one of the things from the speech, the idea that uh, dignity needs to be claimed, critical. And regardless of the content, I would say the most impressive thing about the oration was the courage for a young woman the age of my children to stand up there and say the kinds of things that old Paku Omene won't stand up and say. They won't even say in private. Courage. And courage, as Maya Angelou said, is the most important virtue. All the others rest on courage. And courage is infectious. So don't be surprised. You start hearing other young people begin to speak truth
Their mind.
to power.
To power. And I
Amen.
thought as journalists that what we say we do. I agree. Yeah, a lot of good things stood out for me, but one I jumped out, I mean, like you said, upholding or lifting the positive things, you know, or just commending someone for the little good they're doing, how they trying. If that one person was when she said she talked to the women and the youth and people who are resilient. She said, "I see you." So I wrote that in a space. I am not like, how come she said this to people who feel maybe feeling unseen?
Unseen. Mm-hmm.
And she says someone sees you. We don't
Mm-hmm.
see that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Mm-hmm.
understand how did we not see this? So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, we're allowed to see different things. Our eyes are different. But that was something that stood out to me when
True.
she said, "I see you."
Mm.
Because sometimes that's all people want to hear. They
Amen.
want to know that they're being
Yes.
seen, you
Yes.
know,
And
and that
heard.
they're being heard,
That's the next step. That's the next step. See me first. Hear
and
me.
they hear me. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then you will start thinking about meeting me where I am or doing something about my situation with me.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
So yeah, I mean we could
Yes.
we could go on all day today,
Indeed.
but we're going to 2 hours, so
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
I'm
That's
going to
good.
let you go. Let me see.
Okay.
Oh, someone say, um, okay, yeah, he said, then he said the
Mm-hmm.
best part of his speech for me was when, oh, we already
That it.
read this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we already read this. So do you want me to read? So Sam Wallow just said something, but I, again, I don't want to hold you up. But if you want, we can stay the 2 hours. He says Sam Wallow said the work has changed. Going forward, someone should want to know what's going to be said. Really, in an international audience, if there's a chance it could cause an international incident. This way, you can then go ahead of it and say to your partner, "There's what coming, and why and how." You don't change it; just make them aware.
All right. Sam, that's how you feel. Okay.
Yeah.
I hope that day doesn't come because,
Mhm.
when we start having the expectation that government has to
Censoring
look
people,
over what
eh,
private citizens are reading or thinking or
or
saying,
saying,
then this whole idea of a constitutional right to free speech is erased. It's over. What you're recommending. I'm sorry to say it, my brother. It's authoritarianism, but it's
"It's
dressed in a lingo of protecting partners, international or otherwise, who don't need to be protected, right?
Are you really concerned about that, or say change it internally? Same after, after Patrick even explained the spirit of oration. Said this was how it was. In the beginning, I don't know whether you Christian because then I'll quote Bible in the beginning. But anyway, thank you. Like Patrick said, It's your thoughts, so you have a right
Mhm.
to it.
Mhm.
Hopefully we don't get to that. I agree. Hopefully we don't get to that. Like
Mhm.
somebody like have to vet this before I call people on. Yeah, we live in a country here where people go ballistic when they say, "Oh, the FBI is reading our text messages, and the government is spying on our computers," and people making noise about the right to the privacy, the right to the life, to the extent the right to even have guns and be shooting up in schools. And then someone say, if we're calling a prophet, to give us some voice on the direction of the country, it should be vetted. Okay. That's the beauty
Yeah,
of a new day.
I know. That's
But
right.
thank you, Sam, and thank you everybody else who have stayed with all this to this point. Um, so Patrick, send us home if there is just something that we didn't touch on. Please go
Oh
ahead. So
yeah. So no, what I said just now was what I intended to be the send us home part of the message, and
okay,
that is the most impressive part of this speech for me was
mm,
the courage.
good.
Courage is the first virtue, and that courage is infectious. Expect to see others begin to speak truth to power. Thank
Yep.
you. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. It's a new day. It's a new day.
Yes.
Oh my God. I'm so excited to be a part of a new day. Um, Transformation is happening. We are shifting. We are evolving. We are evolving. We are shifting. And courage has been released in the universe. Courage is contagious. So expect to see more young people and being emboldened to just stand up for what is right or stand up for what they believe in. And even our ancestors, like Patrick saying, "You go for it, girl," or boy. I didn't have a microphone, but I've been thinking about this, so I'm with you, and I agree with what you were the first one I saw what you share. You say, "I'm with her."
Mhm.
Then I was like, I had not even, yeah, I was leaving work and I checked on my phone. I said, what does it mean I'm with her? And when I got home, then I went straight in the Association of Liberian Journalists room. Then I saw what was happening. I was like, oh my God, this is what's going on. So yeah, courage has been released in the atmosphere.
Yes.
Um, Thanks to our viewers for joining us as well today. Remember, on a new day, we say change begins with a conversation. Therefore, let's continue the dialogue, elevate our voices, and actively participate in shaping a world where social justice isn't only an aspiration but a reality. Join us next time on a new day conversations as we continue to explore and advocate for social reform and political reform as well. Let's make every day a new day for progress. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Happy, happy, happy Defiance celebration. It's a new day, y'all.
Thank you so
Bye.
much for the platform. I appreciate the time with you and with the audience. The
Yeah.
conversation is continuing.
I
Yes.
know. I
Mhm.
know. All right. Take
All
care.
right now.
Okay.
Take care,
Bye.
Priscilla. Bye bye. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Our country, sweet Mandela, our country, the God gave all this country. Fellow Liberian,